Hi guys, it's Courtney Cooper and we're back live for Training Tip Tuesday. I'm a 5-star event rider and I'm the owner of C-Square Farm and a partner in Excel Star Sport Horses. And today we've been asked to talk about fitness, horse fitness and how to get a horse prepared now that we're headed into the spring season. For those of you who have been stuck in the snow and mud and cold weather. So we thought we'd talk about those things. So please let us know where you're watching from and let us know what questions you can have about fitness and as we go through the coming year. So we're very, very fortunate here in Area 3 and Area 2 to have events almost every weekend, be them recognized or unrecognized. And so that allows us a lot of flexibility with our fitness schedules, especially for the lower levels. And so the thing about fitness is you have to read your horses. And so sometimes, something will come up or they'll get a little bang or a little ding. And the biggest thing is to remember there's always another day, there's always another competition. So I think I've shown you guys this before. This is what we call the black book. The black book lists every horse that we have in work and what they did. And so you can see this is back in February and what they were doing. And so you can see if you go back and you look at my preliminary horses, let's take River, David, and TikTok. They just ran the 2-star short at Stableview, and I was pretty happy with David and River's fitness. I think TikTok was off the mark a little bit, but we're going to talk about that later. But to give you an idea, going all the way back to the beginning of January, they started with, on January 10th, a 15-minute trot, and then I do interval canters. They did three 3-minute canters with a 2-minute trot in between. If it's real warm, I walk, but a lot of times I'll trot just to increase their fitness and to keep their heart rate up. Now they're doing 3 6s, and so you basically graduate every couple of weeks. So that's what we do in terms of gallops, and we do those on Wednesdays and Sundays once the horses start galloping. Do we have a question?
Nope.
No question. Okay, guys, remember it's interactive, so please take the time and shoot us a question or let us know where you're watching from. Anybody watching? Do we have anybody watching from anywhere?
Nope.
No, nobody's watching us. We're all alone out here in Aiken, South Carolina. Anyway, so moving on. So how do you get them even to the canter stage, and do I canter my training level horses, and how do I do that? So let's say you have a horse and he's been turned out since, let's say, the middle of October, and it's now the end of March, and what do you do? And he's a big shaggy mess, muddy mess. Well, we actually have one of those at home. Who's a Star is at home with my husband Neil, and yesterday was his first day back, and so what they did was a 30-minute walk around the property, and they'll do that for 3 or 4 days, and then he'll add in probably 3 minutes of trot for a couple of days, then 5 minutes of trot for a couple of days. Then if that's all good, he'll probably do 10 minutes of trot for a couple more days, and then build on up to where he's doing flat work. Now in terms of the trot work, it's neither fast nor slow. You're starting to ask the horse to be connected and ask them to go round. Obviously after 4 or 5 months off, you're going to have a little bit of resistance to the idea of work generally. And so when you do your walk around the farm, which is what my husband is doing, ask them to move off the leg, ask them to be connected, ask them to sort of go in a frame, and then soften and go on a long rein. And so do that back and forth until the horses are very confident and moving well. If you listen to the horses, they will tell you how their fitness is going. And so in terms of adding in canter work, again, it's one of those personal preference things. So for example, for Tag, he'll walk for a few days. We'll do 2 minutes of trot for a few days, 5 minutes of trot for a couple days, 10 minutes of trot for a couple days. So after about 2 weeks, working 5 to 6 days a week based on weather and my husband's work schedule, he'll be ready to canter. And so the first couple of days probably we'll do 3 trips around each way and throw in a circle here or there and some transitions. And then for the next 3 days, we'll do a little bit more. And then basically after 3 weeks, we're ready for proper flat work. Any questions? Anybody let us know where they're from?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot of questions. Excellent.
Anne-Marie Cochran says she's here. She's watching from
Excellent.
Ireland, I think that is. Devin Trethaway says she's watching from Glenmore, Pennsylvania. Nicole Commits watching from Northern Kentucky. Kimberly Bonera Schultz is watching from Manville, Louisiana.
Excellent.
And Chloe is watching from Maryland.
Super. Anybody have any questions yet? No questions?
No, not yet.
Okay, so we'd love to hear your questions. So after we do flat work, I would say that 2 to 3 weeks of flat work is really what you'd like to do to get the horses moving off. And I don't add a whole lot of lateral work except into the second and third week. So the first week, it's about straight lines, it's about transitions, it's about getting the horses coming off your leg and moving forward and back. Nugget really wants to be on training tip Tuesday today. Flower's given up. And so we do that. And then after that, I might add some cavaletti work in. So in week 3, I might add cavaletti, trotting them, raised poles, starting at a low height, and then working it in terms of low heights, high heights, cantering them, being able to add and subtract in the cantered stride length so that you get your horse working on adjustability. Then probably week 4 and 5, you start jumping. Now the thing about jumping is we all get excited about it. We all enjoy it. That's why we event, right? And so usually it's not to do the flat work, although we enjoy the flat work. And so the horses will also have the same attitude. And so you want to be careful. And so anybody who's ridden at my place will tell you that everybody gets a neck strap. It doesn't matter who it is because you never know what's going to happen. And so we'll just tuck our finger under the neck strap to keep our hands a little steadier and to keep us safe when the horses play. And so I think a neck strap's a really great idea. I tend to use them very, very long so I can tuck my finger underneath them and be a little bit more secure and just ride with them in my hand. Some people like them short and they grab them if they get into trouble. I'm not as good at that. So play with the jumping work. And so for the jumping work, again, what I start with is straight lines, easy fences, low fences. The key to getting your horses fit is to go slow. If at any point your horse seems to lather up, if they have heat in their legs, if they have a pulse in their foot, if they are breathing hard, that's an indicator that you've gone too far. And so back up, 3 or 4 days, pick up where you've been going from behind and go forward. Any other questions? Any other?
Yes, got 2. Okay. Nicole Kmetz asks, sorry I joined a little late. I'm interested in doing a novice or training classic long format and would be interested in the conditioning plan for a 17-year-old Irish sport horse. How many rides per week, jump flat, hat conditioning sets, and what's the rotation? Thanks.
So it really depends on your horse. So I obviously am very attuned to the Irish sport horse, but some of them are quite heavy and have more Irish draft in them, and some of them are much more what we would call blood horses. And so the first question I would ask you is, how does your horse fit on that scale? If it's real drafty, you're probably going to need to do some galloping work to try to get the horse's fitness. If it's a more thoroughbred type of Irish sport horse, you probably will be able to get away with less conditioning. The reason I say get away with is that the older horses have miles on them, and that's why we love them, because they have conditioning miles and their experience is valuable. And so we don't want to run them off their legs, and we don't want to jump too many jumps with them. What we want to do is keep them safe and sound. And so to do that, I tend to use their base of fitness to move forward, rather to say, okay, they've got to do X, Y, and Z, because usually those old campaigners have gotten to where they are because they have had a very good base on them, and then you just have to sort of top it off with the So in terms of a novice 3-day, which was what your question was, how many days a week? I would say you would be fine riding 5 days a week. If you rode, 30 to 45 minutes a day, I like to try to start off my rides with, a 5 to 10 minute walk, and then 5 to 10 minutes of loosening work, just letting the horse sort of poke around and poke their nose out and see the sights and do the things, and have a soft canter. And then I take a little walk break, and then I put them into more serious work. And at that point, you're asking for transitions, you're asking for the horse to carry themselves, you're asking them to go forward and to go back, to come off the leg. And so if you did, let's say, 3, even 2 dressage schools, 1 hack / conditioning ride with a trot set and maybe a couple canters in it, and then a couple of jumps where you do sort of gymnastic jumping one day, and then more work on position and eye work and body control for the rider, and a little bit of coursework on the other day, I think that would be plenty to get you to the 3-day. The other thing I would say is competitions are very important to overall fitness, because they almost count like 2 days of fitness work, because when you go to a competition, there's the added stress of competing in the environment and all of that brings a bit of anxiety to the situation, both for you and your horse. And so because of that, the work counts a little bit more, because you're working in a more stressful environment. So I would say if you could do at least 2 to 3 competitions leading up to your novice 3-day, then I think, and ride 5 days a week, I think you'll be in a good place for it. Questions? Other questions?
Yes. Devin Trethway asks, what would you focus on for a horse that is in full work by a more beginner rider doing beginner novice, and you're getting the horse back and want to get him going back up to the training level?
So I think the question is, you've just gotten a horse back, maybe Mojito, that you've just gotten him back from sort of a beginner novice rider, and he's been at a low level, and you'd like to bring him up to training level. And how do we do that successfully? Depending on the rider and depending on what they need to work on, I think that's a big driving factor. I know with my horses, there are days when all I work on is my position. So it's not really about the horse, it's about me, and it's about trying to figure out, how to make my position better, riding without stirrups, working on my eye, and things along that line. So it's not always about the horse's conditioning. A lot of times it's about me. So I guess the other question I would have for you, Devin, is what does that training level rider need to work on? And so if you factor in maybe a day or 2 for the rider and 2 or 3 days for the horse, then you'll come away with a really good program. The other thing to factor in is that you'd like to have an easy day where you don't really have to work on anything in particular, and you can go just enjoy your horse and take it easy. Other questions?
Yes. Heather Fritchman asks, hi, watching from Bucks County, PA. Just wanted to say thank you for covering this topic. This is my request. Much appreciated.
No worries, Heather. If you have any questions, let us know. So moving on, so most of the people who work with me and who compete at eventing compete at sort of the novice training and modified levels, beginner novice training and modified levels. And so for those phases, for those levels, you don't necessarily need to have a horse that's super fit. And sometimes if you get the horse super fit, that'll actually work against you. So you want to sort of balance those 2 things. Your horse needs to be fit enough to jump the height, and I always say that you should be able to jump the next level. So if you're training, you should be able to jump modified comfortably. So your horse needs to be fit enough to jump a cross-country track and a show jumping track of modified fences to go training, because what that will do is help you when you get into trouble, as we all do, and make poor decisions. Hopefully there are less and less poor decisions, but we do all tend to make 1 or 2. And so you want to have your horse have the strength to be able to get out of that. And so what I would say in general is if you can do 4 to 5 days of really good work, flat work that, instead of just tootling around, like we're trotting, his head's down, life is good, we don't have to do anything, this is all great, and you're thinking about what happened at work or your fight with your boyfriend or the exam you have at school, that's probably not the work you need to be doing. Like, you need to be able to say, okay, I'm moving my horse forward, I'm bringing it back, I'm having them in self-carriage, I can move my hand forward and be elastic so that they carry their own frame. That's the kind of ride I'm talking about. So if you have 4 or 5 of those rides a week, then most people will be fit. Now, let's say you're on a heavier Irish sport horse, or let's say you're on a draft horse. Then you're going to want to do some conditioning work. So your horse can learn how to gallop and be more effective in their breathing. And so what you want to be doing is, when you canter, a lot of times when I start the canters for the first few times, I just let the horses sort of just canter along. Like, they don't have to do much of anything. They just have to get in the rhythm and stay in the rhythm. And then, the vicious has arrived. Girls, hey, come on. And so as they go up the levels and as the horses do more, then what I'll do in their conditioning gallops are go forward and then I'll come back. And I might sprint up a hill and then settle them to come down the hill. Or I might make them do a lot of transitions. If I've got a horse that's particularly tough on the flat, usually they're not real easy to gallop either. And so what I might do is, canter up the horse, canter up the hill, bring them back, trot a few steps, then go on to canter to really sort of break it up and have the horse start listening. The other thing that I would tell you when you're doing conditioning work is, in a perfect world, you want to use a snaffle. You want to keep your horse in a snaffle. And a lot of times people are like, oh, but I gallop cross country in a gag. Well, that's fantastic. Keep that for your competition, right? Try to train your horses always in a snaffle, because I think that's real important. Other questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. So moving on. So you've done the gallop, and so let's say now that you're moving from modified to preliminary, and you're a little bit at a loss to go, how do I get my horse from A to B? And a lot of those factors are going to be based on how old your horse is, what a base of support is for that horse. For example, if you guys follow along on our Instagram or on our Facebook pages, you'll know that I have a bunch of youngsters right now that are moving up the levels, and they are 6 and 7, and they are babies. And I kind of have to remind myself of that, because you don't know how they're going to come to fitness. And so it's sort of like if you see a young man, a young teenage boy who is 12 or 13, and he's played basketball and he's gawky, and he has no fitness and no strength, and they just have to do a little bit of the work to do it, and sometimes they get real tired. And so that's the same with the young horses. Sometimes they just have days where they fall apart, and it's no good for you if the horse is real tired and they're falling apart and you keep pushing on them. At that point, you need to back away. Now, having said that, I'm a real big proponent with the young horses of taking a break. Last week we did the 2-star short with some of the horses, and the other horses had basically a week off just to catch their breath. They've been working pretty hard here, and then they'll come back this week, do a light week, and then back to work the following week. But I think they need to have a little bit of variation in their schedule. And then the other thing for the young horses, for me, is they get about a month off in the summer. Once the ground gets hard and they've sort of done their winter-spring campaign, they get a block of time off, and I think that's real helpful. But let's say you don't have a young horse, but you have an older horse. Let's say you're like my husband, and you've got a horse called Who's a Star, who's been to, Kentucky. Well, he's got a base of support from, being worked since he was a 4-year-old, and he's 17. So going back to the question about, how do I get a 17-year-old fit? Well, if your horse has been working for, 12 years, they've got a base of support, assuming they haven't had major injuries and been out for extended periods of time. And so that's a whole lot easier to put a base of fitness on more quickly and to bring them up the levels. And so In that case, you can get going a little bit faster, but again, trying to stay slow. Any other questions?
Yes. Chloe asks, for us amateurs with variable schedules with work or travel, how long of a break, i.e. 1 week versus 2 weeks versus 3 weeks, do you recommend the horse to have gradual return to work versus simply picking it up where you left off?
So they've done a lot of studies, and what they found is that the horses really don't lose fitness for a month. So, if you have a horse and for some reason, your work gets really caught up, or, you don't have time, don't fret, don't panic. You can pick them up pretty quickly, as long as you don't go from 0 to 60, that fast. And so, for example, the horses we're giving a break to, they'll have sort of a week off, and then they'll slowly come back to work for over 2 weeks, and then they'll be back to full work in 3 weeks. But they never had any really downtime. A lot of times Reese will tell you, I'll be like, today's an abscess day, or today is a lost shoe day, because, you just have a day sometimes when you're like, the horse doesn't get worked, or something happens and you have an emergency and it's late, and, it's dark, and I ride in the dark sometimes if I have to, but a lot of times it's not mandatory. And so, we've all had those days where you show up in the barn, your horse has an abscess, or your horse has a lost shoe, and you don't ride, and it really doesn't put you back any further. And so don't be afraid to take the occasional day off. As for, if you take a month off, how quickly do you come back? I would say you sort of go back and bring them back over 2 to 3 weeks. I hope that answers the question. If not, ask me a different one. Other questions?
Yes. Nicole Kmez asks, what are your best tips for aftercare of a conditioning set, icing legs, liniment, poultice, day off the next day?
So in terms of our work and what we do with the horses, some of you may know I had a pretty bad break of my ankle probably 5 years ago now, and I broke it on August 6th on my birthday, and I wanted to get to Fair Hill, which is the second week of October. So I had some work to do, and so I had a plate and 5 pins put into it, and so I got a chance to sort of try different modalities and see what worked and what didn't work. And so I will tell you, putting your leg in a bucket of ice water is the best way to get a cold, better than putting ice packs on it or anything else. It's really hard to tolerate, but it's the best way to get something cold and to reduce the inflammation. So what I would say is, if you can train your horses to stand in ice water, that will be the most effective way to reduce inflammation. If you've got a horse that won't stand in ice water, and we have several, then we put Jack's 9 pocket ice boots on them. And the key there is to make sure the leg is wet and to make sure the inside of the boot is wet, because that will transfer the cold the best from the ice onto the leg, which is really what you want to do. And then the other thing you want to make sure that you do with those ice boots, whatever system you use for ice boots, is to make sure that they're still tight 5 or 10 minutes into it. And I ice for 20 minutes if they'll tolerate it. And like I said, if you've ever hurt yourself and you have to put your foot in a bucket of ice, if you can sustain 20 minutes, you're better than me. And then for aftercare after that, we do a stable bandage. I have gone back and forth about poultice over the years. I think it's helpful if you've got a hot leg to draw out the heat. But otherwise, I don't really think the horses enjoy it, having all the stickiness on them and having their hair pulled. And I know that will conflict with a lot of other people, but I've just not seen a lot of overly positive results with it that I couldn't get a different way. I will set them up with alcohol underneath their bandages if they've had a particularly hard work. For the young horses, I tend not to wrap them after they jump or ice them. Ice or wrap them after they jump or they gallop, because I want to see what their legs are, and I also want to know, will they tolerate the work? If they're not tolerating the work, I want to know it. I also want to know if they're not going to tolerate the work sort of as a preliminary horse, because then I don't necessarily want to keep them for intermediate or advanced work. And that may seem a little heartless, but they're lovely, wonderful, lovely animals, and I really care about all of my horses. And if there's a better job for them, because they're not going to hold up to the demands and the rigors of the sport, it's best to know that now versus sort of babying them and then all of a sudden having a wreck. Having said that, if I have a horse that has an injury or a grab or a bang, then I very much will ice and will protect them and will wrap them and will baby them to make them feel better. Also for jumping work and speed work, if I've got an older horse, conditioning work, I will bandage them to try to take care of them, again with the idea that with the older campaigners, you want to keep them safe and sound as long as possible. And I'm also not above giving them some bute. I don't know the age of our viewers, but I know for me that I have used Advil quite a lot in my life, and so I'm not above giving a couple grams of bute. Other modalities I will use, I use a lot of massage work and body work on my horses, and I find that that will help them as well. Different people use different things. I have personally found that massage works really well for my horses. So I hope that answers that question. Other questions?
Nope.
Okay, another questions. So in terms of after work, in terms of, so you have a competition, for example, the horses that went to the 2-star. I had 3 that went to the 2-star. They ran cross country on Saturday. They got iced, they got wrapped. We were fortunate enough that it was at Stableview, which is half an hour away from us. And then they got to come home and they got to go out in the afternoon. And so that's what they did. Sunday, they get their bandages off, and then we jog all the horses up. And I think that's real critical when you're talking about fitness work. Again, the idea is knowing your horse's legs and getting information. And so I will palpate my horse's legs, or Reese, who's behind the camera, will palpate the horse's legs daily, so we know if they have a bang or a bump or a little bit of heat or whatever. And so with them, I will do that. And so, sorry, I'm just watching Cora get on DC. And so I'll know that. And then the Monday after the event, the horses will go and get jogged and flexed and looked at. And so that if there's a bang or a bump that's come up, then we'll go from there. So that's sort of how we do that. And then in terms of work, so the first day back for my horses after the 2-star short was they walked for an hour yesterday, just to get out, to get moving, to do something. Today they did a flat school where they stretched and did a little bit of work to get back on their hind leg, and they did a half an hour walk. And then tomorrow they'll do sort of a gymnastic-y flat school to sort of just get them moving over their top lines. Nothing big, but just helping them sort of get soft and supple. Sorry, now I'm watching the mirror try to get on Griffin, who's not standing in his mounting block. So off the 2 girls go over there. And so they're going off for their walks, and then I'll flat those 2 horses later this afternoon. And then, so they've done a walk day, they've done a flat day, they've done a light gymnastic day. Then on their 4th day, usually they'll go for a long trot. We're very fortunate here in Aiken that we have lots of hacking, and we have a great road that has some pretty good hills in it, actually. And so they'll go and they'll do a long trot set. Then probably Friday they will get properly schooled on the flat, and then Saturday they'll jump, and then Sunday I pick up their gallops again. So they go a whole week without, after a major competition, or even after any competition, without galloping again. So if I'm doing back-to-back weekends, I will gallop them in the middle on a Sunday, but I won't gallop them Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday. That's too much, I think, for them. So that's what I do. Other questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Nope, too far. Right here. Okay. Heather Fritchman asks, do you recommend packing their feet for a night after after a competition?
Yes, without a doubt. If the ground's hard, pack their feet. I use Magic Cushion.
And Kristen Lee Kubik, yeah, I can't. What are your thoughts on chiropractic work?
Again, if you've got someone good and your horse responds, that's fantastic. Touching on a different subject, rider fitness, because that's something that should be touched on as well. If you are able to stay fit, you will be a better partner for your horse. And I know that people have busy lives and, you know, aren't fortunate enough like myself to be able to ride and compete and work with the horses all the day long. And so what that means is you may need to get out and walk. You may need to get up early and get on a stationary bike. You may need to work out in some form or fashion. I very much think that riding is not a strength sport. You know, yes, you need some core strength. You need some strength in your arms and your legs and that sort of thing. Adventures are an unusual group in that we do a lot of our own horsemanship and stable work, and so that keeps a lot of us fit. But I would suggest to everybody that if you're only riding one horse a day, you need to do some sort of outside fitness work. Even if it means running up and down the stairs in your house, you know, 10, 20 times a day, just to make sure that you get some stamina. And then to that end, you know, I know people will say, oh, my knee hurts, or my back hurts, or this hurts, or that hurts. I'm a big believer in taking care of yourself and doing maintenance on yourself, be it taking anti-inflammatories regularly. All the girls and I have used a TENS machine, which sends electric impulses across your muscles and sort of breaks up some of the pain modalities. We've used that. You can get those at like CVS or Target or Walmart. Highly recommend those for anybody who's been in PT for physical therapy. They have used one, I'm sure of it. Ice for, again, if you've got an issue. But all of those things, you know, come back to the fact that we've got to be good partners and we've got to be healthy and fit ourselves. And so that goes back to, you know, stirrup work, which is one of my least favorite things to do, but I do it. So I strongly recommend working on your own fitness. Other questions?
Nope. Heather says, awesome, thanks.
Thanks. Other questions? Does anybody have anything else? In terms of, people have asked me, do I swim my horses? I generally don't swim my horses. I think to some extent it will put unnatural forces on your horses because most of them swim like this, and so they use the underside of their neck and their back gets a little hollow. But having said that, it does have a place. There was a time frame with Tag where we were trying to get him fit, and he was having trouble with his feet, and so we couldn't do the work on the ground, and so swimming was great aerobically for him. Some people have access to a water treadmill. That I think is a fantastic tool to get a horse fit. The biggest thing I would say is hills as well. We're gonna do a little walk. Can we do a little walk over to our driveway? So for those of us who are down in Aiken's pretty flat, and so why don't you walk up here a little bit? Aiken's pretty flat, and so we're real blessed at our property that we have a good bit of a hill, and we actually have a driveway that has a great hill. And so to that end, a lot of times what I'll have the girls do, and actually you'll be able to see them because they're up there walking, is I'll have them just walk up and down the hills on the driveway. Because if you can combine hill work, what you will be able to do is take out the speed work. And so you can just see if, you can see the girls way at the top of the hill, but as we walk over there, you'll see there's quite a long walk up that hill, and then it's sort of, at our cross-country field, That's our lowest point, and then you can walk up and you can see where those blankets are now. But it's a great hill, so if you've got access to a property that has a hill in it, and you can do either walk work or trot work or even your canter work on the hills, the horses will get a lot fitter. For those of us who are in the Mid-Atlantic, we have access to Fair Hill because it's a state park. And so you can go there really at any point in time, and there's some amazing hacking that you can do. I know for me, as I've had these preliminary horses now, I will go ahead and I will be going to Fair Hill more regularly to do their gallops because I'll need the hill work and I'll need the hills to do some work. But you can see as we come over here, you know, it's a pretty long gradual hill, so it's fantastic for the horses to do their work on it, and just to walk up and down a hill, because I know, again, for when I was talking about people getting fit, you know, it's great to use stairs. You know, as you can increase height, you can take away concussive forces like speed. So that was just something I thought of to add. Other questions?
Nope.
All right, guys. Well, I think this will cover a little bit of conditioning and how to get your horses fit. Obviously, if we want to talk about upper level horses, I can talk about that as well. But I think the majority of our audience is, like I said, at the beginner, novice training and modified levels. So please let me know what else you'd like to talk about, and we'll tune in. We'll look forward to you guys tuning in next Tuesday at noon for Training Tip Tuesday. Hope everybody is doing well, and we look forward to seeing everybody in the Mid-Atlantic when we get home at the end of April. If before then people want to visit us in Aiken or come look at horses, let me know. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we look